The Philadelphia 76ers just blew a massive opportunity against the Spurs, and now they are left with absolutely zero margin for error if they want to avoid the play-in tournament. If you want to understand exactly what needs to happen over these final 3 games, what the tiebreaker scenarios look like, and why this loss might have just changed everything, you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because we are breaking down every single possibility, and you cannot afford to miss a second of this. What's up, Sixers faithful? Welcome back to the channel. We need to talk about what just happened against the San Antonio Spurs, because this was a big-time missed opportunity, a game that I didn't necessarily expect the Sixers to win heading into it, but a game they certainly could have won, and honestly probably should have won. And now, because of that loss, Philadelphia is left with no choice. They have to win out if they want to stay out of the play-in tournament. That's the reality we're facing right now. 3 games left in the regular season, and then it's postseason time, hopefully playoff time. There is so much happening right now with how tight the Eastern Conference standings are. Every single game matters. Every result from other teams matters. So make sure you are subscribed, because it is 100% free. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button, and you get informative, entertaining coverage all year long of the Philadelphia 76ers. We are currently sitting at 25,388 subscribers. Let's try to get to 25,400 on this video. Lock us in. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. Going into that game last night, I previewed it on Monday morning in yesterday's video. I said that with 4 games left at the time, I was hoping the Sixers would go at least 3-1. I wasn't really expecting them to beat the San Antonio Spurs, because they have been one of the absolute best teams in the league over the past few months. But man, as that game went on, you really started to think the Sixers had a legitimate chance. And now look, I know there were some fans who were like, why are you so skeptical? The Sixers have been playing well lately. You should believe in them. But let me give you the numbers on the Spurs heading into yesterday's game. These are the stats before the game even tipped off. San Antonio has been the best team in the league, 27-3 since February 1st. Number 1 in points per game, number 1 in offensive rating, number 3 in defensive rating, number 1 in net rating. Guys, they have lost 3 games since February 1st. Do you understand how insane that is? I think at one point they were 32-16. Now they're like 60-19. Absolutely ridiculous. This is an elite team, a championship contender. So yeah, I was skeptical going in, but that game started and both teams were fully healthy. The Sixers came out, and I was genuinely impressed with how they played early, especially after the first few minutes of the first quarter and into the first half. The Spurs would try to extend the lead, and the Sixers would fight right back. They were playing like a team that was on the level of San Antonio, or at least close to it, and that's a really encouraging sign. A couple of guys really got off to good starts. Paul George and Joel Embiid were leading the way. Paul George put up 11 points in that first quarter alone. You're sitting there thinking, okay, he's going to continue this hot stretch he's been on since coming back from the suspension. This is going to be a huge game for him. Joel Embiid started the first quarter off a little slow and actually looked hobbled out there after an early collision with Victor Wembanyama. I was genuinely worried. I thought, man, is he going to be able to return and play in this game? Is he going to have to sit out? But he comes back and plays the entire second quarter, and he was just dominant. 16 points and 5 rebounds in the second quarter alone. And as a whole throughout the entire game, until Wemby left at halftime, which we'll talk about in just a second, Embiid was kind of giving it to Victor Wembanyama. Now, obviously, Wemby is going to get his. He's one of the best players in the league. With his size and his ability, he's just a freak of nature. He was doing some unbelievable stuff out there. But Embiid really looked good on both ends of the floor. He was rebounding the basketball at a high level, which honestly he doesn't always do these days. I tweeted out some of his highlights from last night. If you want to give me a follow on Twitter, it's Jake Chipper, or you can follow our Instagram as well, 76ers Now IG. If you want to see the highlights, go check those out. But it was really encouraging to see Embiid look like this against Wemby. You could tell it was a little personal. Wemby knows that Embiid dropped 70 on him a couple years ago. Embiid knows that people are looking at Wemby as the next great center in the league. The torch is being passed, so to speak. So you could kind of see early on there was a lot of physicality between the two of them. But Embiid was matching that physicality, which again is really good to see, especially considering he looked hobbled early. He came back, he fought through it, and he played well. So at that point, we're approaching halftime. You're thinking the Sixers are looking pretty good. San Antonio goes on a run and takes a halftime lead, but right before halftime, Wemby got shaken up a little bit. Paul George kind of ran into him. It was completely inadvertent. It was an accident as they were both going for a loose ball. Wemby ended up suffering a rib injury and did not return for the entire second half of that game. So you're thinking, okay, coming out of halftime, the Sixers are only down 7. The Spurs just lost Victor Wembanyama. With how Philadelphia had played up to that point in the game, I was sitting there watching thinking, you know what, the Sixers can and should win this game. That's why it was so disappointing to see how that game finished. San Antonio was still the better team even without Wembanyama out there for the last half of the game. And again, did I expect the Sixers to win this one coming in? No. But once the game started, and especially once Wemby went out, should the Sixers have won that one? Yes, absolutely. And it would have really helped them in this playoff race, which we're going to get to here in just a second. But it just makes things a lot more difficult now, especially when you consider the opportunity that was right there in their hands. Tyrese Maxey played an awful game. Paul George was not good after the first quarter. It was really only Joel Embiid that was carrying this team for large chunks of the game. And so if Maxey even plays a decent game, or if Paul George is decent late in that game, maybe the Sixers pull it out. Maybe they win. Unfortunately, they did not. So we're going to get into how this affects the standings and all of that. We're going to take a look at some of the results from last night and break down some of the tiebreaker scenarios as well. It can get a little bit confusing, but I think I've got it down enough to explain to you guys how the Sixers season could go the rest of the year. But before we do that, chime in for me. Give me your one-word reaction to that loss on Monday against San Antonio. My one word is disappointing, but let me know what you think down in the comment section. And real quick, before we get to the standings breakdown, the new Sixers and Mitchell and Ness collaboration on this Allen Iverson gear is absolutely sweet. I've been telling you guys about it for a few days now after it released earlier in the week, maybe late last week. ShopSixers.com has a bunch of cool shirts, a couple of jackets. You can see I've got mine right now. I told you I ordered mine. I'm not lying when I tell you guys I'm getting something. I actually get it, so I can tell you firsthand that this stuff is high quality. It's well worth the price, but it is limited edition, and it is starting to sell out a little bit. So make sure you take advantage before it's too late. Again, ShopSixers.com, Allen Iverson, Mitchell and Ness, Sixers collab. Go get it before it's too late. If you like this design, you can go grab it right now. All right, so let's talk about some notable results from last night because they have a big impact on where the Sixers stand. It was pretty huge for the Knicks to end up beating the Atlanta Hawks. Shout out to Jalen Brunson for that one. Even though Atlanta nearly hit that half-court shot from Trae Young that would have sent the game to overtime, it didn't count. So if you're the Sixers originally, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, you were thinking you wanted Atlanta to lose so you could try to catch them. That might not be the case anymore, but either way, the Knicks winning that game is potentially big for the Sixers. This result was not good, though. Detroit sat a lot of their guys on Monday. Orlando ended up winning that game pretty heavily. And so with the Sixers loss and Toronto not playing yesterday, Toronto plays tonight against Miami. The Sixers did drop back down to the 7th spot in the Eastern Conference. They're a half game behind Toronto. They are now 2 games behind Atlanta, but you see they're tied with Charlotte and Orlando, all at 43 and 36. Luckily, the Sixers win the tiebreaker over those two teams, which is why they're 7th instead of 8th or 9th. But again, if you win that game against the Spurs, you're 44 and 35. You're only a game behind Atlanta after they lose. You're still ahead of Toronto. Now you've dropped back down to the play-in, at least momentarily, depending on what happens with the Raptors tonight against the Miami Heat. But man, just such a missed opportunity when you're playing a Spurs team without Victor Wembanyama in a game where you were looking pretty good. Now looking forward toward how this season could end, because obviously we do not want Philadelphia in the play-in. I want that number 6 seed. The number 5 seed, even though it's technically possible, is probably out of the realistic picture at this point. So it's Houston on Thursday. That's the big one. We'll be live for that game, so make sure you are subscribed. But it's a huge game against a good team. You have to win because I think Indiana and Milwaukee, not that they're gimmies, but you better win those games, right? Those two are expected wins. You've got to have this one against Houston on Thursday. The Sixers absolutely have to win out to put themselves in the best position possible to not be in the play-in. Now let's take a look at some of the tiebreakers, because with the way the East is so jumbled right now, it's more likely than not that a lot of these teams from 5 through 10 are going to finish with the same record. Right now, any of the teams 5 through 10 can finish anywhere from 5 through 10. That is how close it is. So it's probably going to come down to tiebreakers. When it comes to head-to-head tiebreakers, the Sixers and the Raptors split the season series, but the Sixers win that tiebreaker thanks to their division record. The Sixers got swept by the Hawks, so Atlanta owns that tiebreaker. The Sixers won the series over the Magic and over the Hornets. They did lose the series to Miami, so those are the two-way tiebreaker scenarios. But as you saw in the standings just a moment moment ago, the Sixers are currently in a three-way tiebreaker right now. And that gets a little more confusing. That's kind of where I want to go with this, because it's very likely there will be more than a two-way tiebreaker. There could be a three-way or even four-way tiebreaker. The first thing that's determined in a multi-team tiebreaker is if all teams have the same record. Did one of those teams win their division? The Sixers and the Raptors cannot win their division because the Celtics are leading the Atlantic. But a lot of those teams in the Southeast Division, one of them is going to have to win that division. So that'll play a factor. The bigger one, though, is head-to-head winning percentage. So you take the cumulative record against the other teams you're tied with. Whoever has the best record goes to the top of those standings. For example, right now, Philadelphia is tied with Charlotte and Orlando at 43 and 36. Out of those three teams, the Sixers have the best record against each other. That's why they're 7th, Charlotte's 8th, and Orlando is 9th. So how does this impact the rest of the season? To put it very simply, because of the tiebreakers the Sixers own and the teams they have beaten, remember they got swept by Atlanta and they lost the series to Miami. As long as those two teams are not involved in a tiebreaker with the Sixers, Philadelphia is in a good spot because of their winning records against the other teams. I did some deep digging into what the best case scenario would be for Philadelphia to land that number 6 seed. Again, 5 is technically possible, but a lot of stuff has to go right. So I'm really looking at that 6th spot. Here's what needs to happen. This is all based on the Sixers winning out. Philadelphia has to win these final 3 games. If they don't, their chances of getting the number 6 seed are pretty slim. You're depending a lot more on other teams losing. The only 2 things that need to happen to guarantee the Sixers that number 6 spot if they win out is the Hawks actually winning games. We want the Hawks to win because we do not want the Hawks to finish with the same record as the Sixers. If they do, and we're in a multi-team tiebreaker, the Sixers' 0-4 record against the Hawks would drag them down below a lot of other teams. So we need Atlanta to win at least 2 of their last 3 games. And then all Toronto would have to do is lose one of their remaining 4 games, and Philadelphia would be in the 6th seed, regardless of what Miami, Orlando, or Charlotte does. Pretty simple, right? Now, if the Sixers win out and the Hawks only win one of their final 3 games, that's not good. The Hawks right now have the Cavs twice and the Heat left on their schedule, so it's possible they only win one. But if the Hawks win one of their final 3 and the Sixers win out, they'll have the same record. And as those multi-way tiebreaker rules go, if it's the Hawks and the Sixers and the Hornets and the Magic all with the same record, the Sixers would actually be at the bottom of that group. Here's why. The first team in a multi-way tie would be whoever wins the division. If you're a division winner, you get priority regardless of head-to-head record. Well, if the Hawks lose games and the Hornets win out, the Hornets would actually win the Southeast Division. So even though the Sixers have a better record against Charlotte, it doesn't matter. The Hornets would rise to 5. And then because you have to factor in the 0-4 record the Sixers have against Atlanta, they'd be below Charlotte, below Atlanta, and below the Magic if it's those 4 teams in the tie. So we just do not want to finish with the same record as Atlanta in a multi-way tiebreaker. Same with Miami. But Miami, if the Sixers win out, can't catch them. They're too far behind at this point. If the Hawks lose out, that would also work, but I'd be surprised if that happens given how good they've been lately. Again, for Atlanta, it's Cleveland twice and Miami. For the Raptors, it's Miami twice, the Knicks, and the Nets. So we'll kind of see how this goes. But again, Atlanta wins 2 of those last 3. Raptors just lose 1, and then the Sixers win out. You get the 6th seed. Just do not want to be in a tiebreaker involving the Hawks or the Heat. That's really all you need to know. A couple of big games to monitor tonight. Of course, Miami and Toronto play each other. They actually play twice over the next couple of days. So those 2 games are going to be massive. We're fine with Miami winning at this point because, yes, they do have the tiebreaker over the Sixers. But if the Sixers lose a couple games anyway, who really cares? The Sixers should be winning. We should be thinking about this in terms of the Sixers winning games and then figuring out what we want to have happen elsewhere. So we want Miami to win so Toronto can drop in the standings. Charlotte is at Boston. Obviously, we'd rather have Charlotte lose. So I'm rooting for Miami and Boston tonight. I never thought I'd be doing that in a single day, but unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. And again, the Sixers don't necessarily have to win out, but it becomes a lot more difficult to get the 6th seed if they lose to Houston, depending on what else happens around the league. So that's what I'm saying. I don't want to sound desperate, but I genuinely think the Sixers have to win out if they want to ensure themselves that they do not have to play a play-in game. I know Embiid the other day was like, whoever we play, and Paul George said, yeah, we'll see what happens. Wherever we finish, we'll finish and we'll be ready. But I don't want to be in the play-in. All it takes is 1 bad game, 2 bad games, and you lose and you're out of the playoffs entirely. Gone. Season over. I want that 6th spot. I also want it because I don't want to play Boston or a fully healthy Detroit Pistons team in the first round. I'd much rather play Cleveland or New York in that first round matchup. That 3-6 or 4-5 matchup is way more favorable. So just win out, really just beat Houston and then take care of business against the Pacers and the Bucks, and you should be all good. But man, a lot can still happen even though there's less than a week left to go. There are so many moving parts, so many different scenarios. It's going to be a wild few days. Predict it for me. What seed are the Sixers going to finish as? I do think they will end up grabbing that 6th spot based on the schedules of these other teams and the tiebreakers they own. But you let me know your prediction down in the comments section. One last reminder. Hit that subscribe button. There is a lot that can happen over these last few days, and I am going to be here to explain it all to you with the tiebreakers, the schedules, the results, all of that. So there's a lot more content coming, and of course we're going to be live for that game on Thursday against Houston. We'll see about the Pacers and Bucks games. We'll see if we can make those live as well. But then of course playoff watch parties are coming too, so lock us in, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and we'll catch you next time right here on 76ers Now.